The hell you think you're going? Get that car out of here before I have it towed. You filthy cockroach. You deaf? We don't let black people through this gate. He thinks he lives here? That's hilarious. Listen carefully, boy. Black people don't own houses here. Take your broke self back to whatever hole you crawled out of.
The man in the driver's seat didn't blink. Hands on the wheel, voice barely a whisper.
My name is Franklin Owens. I own 14 Crestwood Lane.
Both guards burst out laughing. One slammed his hand on the hood.
Get out before we drag you out!
Franklin picked up his phone. One call, just one. Both of them fired before sunset. 6 hours earlier, the morning sun crept through the blinds of a downtown Charlotte condo. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the kitchen. A quiet jazz track played from a small speaker on the counter. Franklin Owens stood barefoot on the cold tile floor. He wore a faded Howard University hoodie and gray sweatpants. No watch, no jewelry, no flashy anything. Just a man making breakfast on a Tuesday morning. He cracked 2 eggs into a skillet. The butter sizzled and popped. He scrolled through quarterly earnings on a tablet propped against the toaster. Numbers most people would never see in a lifetime. Numbers he managed before his first cup of coffee. His phone buzzed. Denise. The crew finished last night. The house is ready, baby. Franklin smiled. Not a big smile, a quiet one. The kind that comes after years of grinding and climbing and proving. I'll head over around noon. Movers are already on the way. You want me to meet you there? I'm done at the hospital by 11. That'd be nice. I'll see you at the gate. He hung up and took a slow sip of coffee. On his desk sat a framed photo, a crumbling brick apartment building in East Baltimore. Cracked windows, graffiti on the stoop, water stains running down the walls. That was home once, a lifetime ago. Franklin folded his laundry by hand. He read the obituaries in the Charlotte Observer, a habit his grandmother gave him when he was 9 years old. Read who left this world today, she used to say. Then go out and earn your place in it. He had earned his place. A degree from Wharton, a law degree from Harvard, a private equity firm, Pinnacle Equity Group, managing $4.2 billion in assets. Forbes had profiled him twice. Bloomberg once called him the quietest titan in American finance. But today, none of that mattered to him. Today, he was just a man moving into his new house. Now let me tell you about that house, and the neighborhood wrapped around it. Crestwood Hills sat on 200 acres of rolling green land northwest of Charlotte. 42 estates behind iron gates. A private golf course with a waiting list 3 years long. Magnolia trees older than anyone living there. The cheapest home on the street? $15 million. The residents? Retired senators. Fortune 500 heirs. Old families with old money, and even older opinions about who belonged. The HOA ran the neighborhood like a private country. They had fought lawsuits to block affordable housing developments nearby. They screened every contractor, every visitor, every delivery truck that rolled through the gate. And the man who controlled that gate? Dale Hargrove. Dale was 52. Former county sheriff's deputy. Thick neck, buzz cut. Walked like he still carried a badge and a gun. He had been quietly forced out of law enforcement after 3 excessive force complaints, including one involving a black teenager during a routine traffic stop. But at Crestwood Hills, nobody asked about his past. They just liked that he kept the wrong element out. Dale knew every resident's car by sight, every housekeeper's schedule by heart, every gardener's first name. He didn't just guard the gate, he owned it. At least, in his own mind, he did. And here's the thing nobody in the neighborhood wanted to say out loud. Franklin Owens was the first black homeowner in Crestwood Hills' 35-year history. The very first. When his purchase went through 3 weeks ago, the HOA board held a special meeting. Sharon Whitfield, board president, old money Southern socialite, pearls and pressed blouses, opened the discussion with one careful sentence. We just want to make sure the property maintains its character. Nobody objected. Nobody asked what character meant. They all understood perfectly. The purchase details were sent to the security office the next day. Dale Hargrove received the notification. He opened it. He read the name. He initialed the form. Then he buried it at the bottom of the pile. Franklin Owens knew none of this. Not about the meeting, not about the whispers, not about the man at the gate who had already decided he didn't belong. He rinsed his coffee cup, grabbed his keys, put on a clean polo shirt and jeans, and he drove toward his new home. The sky was clear. The highway stretched wide open. The Carolina sun sat warm on his face through the windshield. For now, everything was peaceful. For now. Franklin's Range Rover rolled down the two-lane road toward Crestwood Hills at exactly 11:15. The windows were halfway down. A warm breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle from the tree line. Spanish moss hung from the oak branches like old curtains. Sprinklers hissed softly across a nearby lawn, catching sunlight in tiny rainbows. The iron gates appeared around the bend, tall, black, polished to a mirror shine. Behind them, the neighborhood stretched like a painting. Stone driveways curving through emerald lawns, manicured hedges, rooftops touching the Carolina sky. Franklin pulled up to the checkpoint. A white wooden booth sat to the left with tinted windows. A red and white barrier blocked the road. A security camera above the booth pointed at his windshield like a watching eye. Dale Hargrove stepped out before the car fully stopped. He didn't walk. He strutted, chest out, chin up, one hand resting on the flashlight clipped to his belt. His boots crunched the gravel like he wanted every step heard across the entire street. He reached the window, looked inside. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. His eyes moved from Franklin's face to his polo shirt to the leather seats inside the car and back again. Scanning, measuring, judging. "Help you," Dale said. But the tone didn't say help. It said explain yourself. "Good morning, Franklin Owens, 14 Crestwood Lane." Dale didn't reach for his clipboard, didn't glance at the computer glowing inside the booth. He just stood there and stared like he was waiting for a punchline. 14 Crestwood Lane, he repeated slowly, like the words tasted wrong in his mouth. "That property belongs to a Mr. Owens." "That's me." Dale leaned closer. His shadow fell across Franklin's lap. The smell of stale coffee and cheap aftershave pushed through the window like a wall. "That's so. Got proof?" "I just told you my name. Check your system." Dale didn't check. He crossed his thick arms and looked over the roof of the car like something more important was happening somewhere far in the distance. "System's not pulling anything up," he said flatly. He hadn't touched the system, hadn't even walked back to look at the screen. "Pull over to the right and wait while I verify." Franklin looked at him for a long moment. His face gave nothing away. Then he put the car in gear and pulled to the side of the road. He waited. 1 minute. 5. 10. Through the rearview mirror, he watched Dale inside the booth. Not typing, not checking any screen. He was on the phone, leaning back in his chair with one boot propped on the counter, laughing about something, scratching his neck, taking his sweet, deliberate time. Kyle Prescott stepped out and walked toward the car. Late 20s, sandy blonde hair cropped short, a permanent smirk stitched to his face. His body camera sat on his chest, blinking red like a tiny heartbeat. Kyle circled the Range Rover slowly. He peered through the rear window with his hands cupped around his eyes, checked the tires one by one, ran his fingertips along the trunk edge like he was inspecting a suspicious package at a shipping dock. He came to the driver's window and leaned in. "Nice ride," he said, but it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a suspicion, like, how exactly did someone like you end up behind this wheel? "Company vehicle?" Kyle asked, tilting his head. "It's my car." "Registered to who?" "Pinnacle Equity Group." Kyle's smirk widened. "So it's a company car." "It's my company." Kyle laughed through his nose, shook his head slowly, and strolled back to the booth with his hands in his pockets. 12 minutes now. The sun had climbed higher and pressed against the windshield like a hot, open palm. Sweat formed along the back of Franklin's neck and between his shoulders. Not from fear. Never from fear. From the slow, familiar burn of something he had felt 100 times across his life. Dale came back. Slower this time. More deliberate. He rested both hands on Franklin's window frame like he was leaning on a fence post at a barbecue. "Here's the deal," Dale said. "I called the HOA. Mrs. Whitfield has no record of your purchase being finalized." "That's not possible. The sale closed 3 weeks ago. It's on public record." "My system shows nothing. Mrs. Whitfield confirms nothing. You've got no business behind this gate." Franklin pulled out his phone. 2 taps. The property deed appeared, his full name in bold, the address beneath it, the Mecklenburg County seal stamped at the bottom. He held it up to Dale's face, close enough for every word to be readable. Dale glanced at it for less than 1 second. Didn't read a single line. "Can't verify documents on a phone screen. Anyone can fake a PDF. You know how many scammers roll up to this gate trying to talk their way inside?" Franklin's hand didn't shake. His voice stayed level, but his eyes changed. Something behind them went dangerously still, like deep water before a storm. "I am the legal owner of that property. You're preventing me from accessing my home." Dale smiled, slow and wide, the kind a man gives when he believes he holds all the power in the world and nobody can take it. "I'm preventing an unverified individual from entering a private community. That's my job." He tapped the roof twice with his knuckle, hard, like dismissing a cab driver. "Now move along." Franklin didn't move. "I said move along." "No." The word hung in the summer air. Simple, calm, unmovable. Dale's smile vanished. His face flushed angry red, the kind that starts at the neck and crawls upward like slow fire. "You don't want to do this," Dale growled. "I've dealt with people like you before. You push, I push harder. Trust me, you don't want me pushing." Behind them, a white Mercedes pulled up to the gate. An older white woman with oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf around her neck. Dale spun around and transformed completely. Shoulders loose, smile wide and bright, voice warm as Sunday morning. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson. Heading to the club?" "Just brunch, Dale." "Enjoy every minute. Go right ahead, ma'am." The gate lifted instantly. The Mercedes glided through. No ID, no phone call, no clipboard, no questions asked. The gate lowered with a soft click. Dale turned back to Franklin. The warmth drained from his face like water down a sink. What was left was cold and hard and ugly. "You see how that works?" He jerked his thumb at the gate. "She belongs here. You don't. Simple as that." A second car approached. A white man in a BMW convertible with the top down. Dale raised one hand in a lazy wave and hit the gate button without even looking. The barrier lifted. The BMW cruised through without a word. Smooth, automatic, easy. The gate dropped back down. Franklin watched every second of it. His knuckles pressed white against the steering wheel leather. "How many residents have you let through since I've been here?" Franklin asked. His voice was still calm, but there was iron underneath now. "None of your damn business." "How many did you ask for ID?" Dale stepped closer. Close enough that Franklin could see a vein pulsing hard in his temple. Close enough to smell the sweat soaking through his uniform collar. "One last chance," Dale said, voice barely a whisper. "Turn around. Drive away. Don't come back without proper paperwork. Because the next call I make is to Charlotte PD. I'll tell them I've got a trespasser at the gate refusing to leave." He let the silence sit for a moment. "You know what happens after that, right?" Franklin understood perfectly. He'd understood since he was 12 years old, standing on a cracked sidewalk in Baltimore, watching blue lights flash in his face. He looked at Dale, then at Kyle, standing a few feet behind with folded arms and his camera blinking steadily. Then past both of them, through the iron bars, at the road beyond. His road, leading to his driveway, his front door, his home. "I'm not going anywhere," Franklin said. Dale pulled the radio from his belt like he was drawing a weapon. Your call. Don't say I didn't warn you. He keyed the radio. Kyle, log this. Non-compliant individual at the main gate, refusing to vacate. Possible trespasser. I may need to contact local PD. Copy that, Dale. Franklin sat back, looked up through the windshield at the wide sky. Clear, blue, not a single cloud. He reached for his phone. Not to show a deed this time. This time, he had a call to make. But before Franklin could dial, a white Mercedes SUV turned the corner and rolled toward the gate. The driver's window came down. Denise Owens looked out. High cheekbones, sharp eyes, natural hair pulled back in a low bun. She wore surgical scrubs underneath a cream blazer, straight from the hospital. Still had her badge clipped to the pocket. She spotted Franklin's Range Rover parked on the shoulder. Her brow creased. She pulled up behind him. Dale turned his head. Another car. Another black face. He walked over before she could put the car in park, planted his feet wide and leaned down until his face was level with hers. His eyes dragged over her scrubs, her badge, her face, like none of it meant anything. And you are? Denise Owens. I'm meeting my husband. We own 14 Crestwood Lane. Dale stared at her, then at Franklin's car, then back. A slow, sour grin crept across his mouth. Sure you do, sweetheart. Denise's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said, sure you do. Pull your vehicle over there next to your friend and wait. He's not my friend. He's my husband, and we own that house. Dale let out a long, exaggerated sigh, the kind a man makes when he thinks the person in front of him is too stupid to understand basic words. Ma'am, I don't care if he's your husband, your brother, or your Uber driver. Nobody goes through this gate until I say so. Pull over. Denise didn't pull over. She put the car in park right where she sat. I want to speak to your supervisor. Dale puffed out his chest, hooked both thumbs into his belt. You're looking at him. Then I want the name of whoever hired you. File a complaint with the HOA, office hours, Monday through Friday. Now move your vehicle before you block this whole lane. Denise looked past Dale at the road beyond the gate. The neighborhood she had spent 3 months helping furnish. The house where she picked tiles for the master bathroom and paint for the nursery just last week. And here she was, on the wrong side of a gate, being told to wait by a man in a cheap uniform who wouldn't even look at a computer screen. She pulled up next to Franklin. 2 black professionals in 2 cars, stuck, while the gate opened and closed for every white face that drove past. Franklin rolled down his window. Don't react, he said quietly. I'm calling Raymond. Dale wasn't done, not even close. He walked back to Franklin's car with Kyle right behind him. His posture was different now, wider, heavier. His flashlight was unclipped, gripped loosely in his right hand, swinging at his side like a baton. Since neither one of you can produce valid documentation, I need to verify these vehicles aren't stolen. Franklin looked at him. You're not law enforcement. I'm head of security. I have the authority to ensure the safety of every resident behind that gate. By accusing us of driving stolen cars? Dale turned to Kyle. Run both plates. Kyle tapped the license numbers into his phone. He came back 30 seconds later. Range Rover registered to Pinnacle Equity Group. Mercedes registered to Denise L. Owens. Dale didn't blink. Pinnacle Equity what? Could be a shell company. Doesn't prove residency. And the Mercedes? Franklin asked. Her name. Same name she just gave you. Dale waved his hand like he was brushing away a fly. A car registration is not a deed. He stepped to the back of the Range Rover and slapped the trunk twice with his open palm. The sound cracked through the quiet street like a gunshot. Pop the trunk. No. Pop the trunk. I need to make sure there's nothing suspicious inside this vehicle. You have no legal authority to search my car. Dale's grip on the flashlight shifted. He stepped closer until he was standing directly behind the trunk, blocking any reverse. "You know what's suspicious?" Dale said loudly, making sure Denise could hear every word. "Two people showing up with no paperwork, refusing to cooperate. That's what gets people arrested." Kyle positioned himself between the two cars, arms crossed, feet apart, camera blinking red. The two guards had boxed them in, one behind, one beside, like a cage made of men. A resident, a white woman in tennis whites, stopped her golf cart at the edge of the road. She held her phone up, recording. Another neighbor paused on the sidewalk with his golden retriever, watching in silence. Dale noticed the recording. He straightened his collar and raised his voice. "Just doing my job, Mrs. Bennett, making sure only authorized people get through." Mrs. Bennett didn't respond. She kept filming. Denise's hands gripped her steering wheel until her knuckles ached. Her jaw was clenched tight. Her eyes burned with a fury she was barely holding behind her teeth. "Franklin," she said through the window. Her voice shook, not from fear, from rage she was swallowing whole. "I know," he said. "Stay calm. I'm calling now." Franklin dialed Raymond Aldridge. 1 ring. 2. "Franklin, what's going on?" Franklin spoke in precise, measured sentences, no wasted words. "I'm at the Crestwood Hills gate. Head of security is refusing entry to my property. He's denied my ID, refused to check the system, asked to search my vehicle without cause. My wife is here. She's been denied too. 2 white residents were waved through with no verification, while we've been held here for over 20 minutes. Raymond's voice went cold and sharp. "Are they physically preventing you from leaving?" "We can leave. We're choosing not to." "Body camera?" "Yes. Junior guard. On the entire time." "Witnesses?" "At least 2. One recording on her phone." A short pause. Then Raymond spoke with the calm of a man who had done this many times before. "Stay exactly where you are. Hands visible at all times. Don't raise your voice. Don't step out of the car. And say these 5 words to the guards. My attorney is now listening." Franklin set the phone on the dashboard. Speaker on. Volume up. Raymond's steady breathing filled the still afternoon air. Franklin looked up at Dale, still standing behind the trunk with his flashlight gripped tight. "My attorney is now listening." Something flickered across Dale's face. A crack, small but real. His eyes darted to the phone on the dashboard, then to Franklin, then to the woman recording from her golf cart. 3 seconds of dead silence. Only the sprinkler across the street and 2 idling engines. Then Dale set his jaw. The crack sealed itself shut. "I don't care if the president is listening. You're not getting through this gate." Dale pulled out his personal phone, dialed 3 numbers. 911. "This is Dale Hargrove, head of security at Crestwood Hills. I need officers at the main gate. 2 individuals, black male, black female, refusing to leave. They claim to be residents but can't provide valid proof. The male has become verbally confrontational. I'm concerned for community safety." He hung up, slid the phone into his pocket, and smiled at Franklin. "Help's on the way. Let's see how that attorney handles Charlotte PD." Franklin didn't respond. Hands on the wheel, eyes forward. The phone glowed on the dashboard. Raymond was still listening, still recording, every single word. 8 minutes passed, the longest 8 minutes of Denise's life. She watched a cardinal land on the iron gate and tilt its head. She counted her own heartbeats. She stared at the barrier that wouldn't lift for her and wondered how many times in her life she would have to prove she deserved to exist in a space she had paid for. 2 Charlotte Mecklenburg PD cruisers turned the corner, blue and white. They rolled in slowly and parked in a V formation behind both cars. 4 doors opened. 3 officers stepped out. The 4th, Captain Brenda Hollins, was already walking before her door fully closed. Tall, composed, uniform pressed sharp, badge catching the afternoon light. She approached Dale first, listened for about 90 seconds. Dale pointed at both cars, used his hands a lot. His voice was animated and confident. He spoke like a man filing a righteous report. Then Hollins walked to Franklin's window, face neutral, completely professional. "Sir, I'm Captain Brenda Hollins, Charlotte Mecklenburg PD. Can I see some identification?" Franklin handed her his driver's license. Then he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the original property deed. Thick paper, county seal embossed at the bottom, his signature in dark ink. Hollins examined both carefully. She walked back to her cruiser and keyed the radio. "Dispatch, requesting property verification. 14 Crestwood Lane, Crestwood Hills. Owner listed as Franklin T. Owens." The radio crackled. 12 seconds of silence. Then the response came through, clear and flat. "Confirmed. Property at 14 Crestwood Lane is owned by Franklin T. Owens. Sale recorded with Mecklenburg County 3 weeks ago. All clear." Hollins stepped out of the cruiser. She looked at Dale, then at the gate. Then she started walking toward him with a look on her face that could cut glass. Hollins stopped 2 feet in front of Dale. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone did all the cutting. "Mr. Hargrove, dispatch just confirmed that the man sitting in that vehicle is the legal owner of 14 Crestwood Lane. The sale was recorded with Mecklenburg County 3 weeks ago." She paused, let the words land. "Why didn't you verify this through your system before calling my department?" Dale's mouth opened. Nothing came out for a full second. The system was down," he stammered. "It's been glitchy all week. I had no way to confirm. Is it down right now?" Dale glanced toward the booth. Through the tinted window, the blue glow of the computer screen was clearly visible, clearly on. He didn't answer. Hollins took 1 step closer. "I'm going to ask you again. What verification steps did you take before deciding to deny this man access to his own property?" "I called Mrs. Whitfield. She said..." "Did you check the resident database?" Silence. "Did you check the HOA notification log?" Longer silence. "Did you take any step at all, any single step, that didn't involve looking at this man's face and deciding he didn't belong here?" Dale's jaw worked back and forth like he was chewing on something bitter. His flashlight hung limp in his hand. Kyle stood 5 feet behind him, suddenly very interested in his own shoes. The body camera on Kyle's chest was still blinking, still recording everything. Hollins turned away from Dale and walked back to Franklin's car. Her posture shifted, professional, respectful, a different conversation entirely. "Mr. Owens, dispatch has confirmed your ownership. You are free to enter your property." She looked at the gate, then back at Dale. Her voice carried across the road. "Open the gate! Now!" Dale didn't move. "Mr. Hargrove, open the gate!" His hand trembled, just slightly. He walked to the booth, reached inside, pressed the button. The red and white barrier lifted with a mechanical hum. The iron gates parted slowly. Beyond them, the long magnolia-lined road stretched toward 14 Crestwood Lane, toward home. Franklin looked through the opening. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply put the car in gear. As he rolled forward, Hollins leaned into his window one last time. "Mr. Owens, would you like to file a formal complaint regarding this incident?" "Yes," Franklin said. "I would." Hollins nodded. She turned to Mrs. Bennett, still sitting in her golf cart with her phone raised. "Ma'am, I'd like your contact information. That footage may be relevant to an official report." Mrs. Bennett nodded and lowered her phone. "I recorded everything, from the very beginning." Denise pulled through the gate behind Franklin. Her hands were still shaking on the wheel. But as the barrier lowered behind her, she exhaled for the first time in 30 minutes. Dale stood next to the booth. His arms hung at his sides. His face was gray. Kyle wouldn't look at him. Now let me tell you what Dale Hargrove didn't know while he was out there playing gatekeeper. The man he called a cockroach? Franklin Owens, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Equity Group, a private equity firm managing $4.2 billion in assets. $4.2 billion. Forbes had profiled him twice. Bloomberg called him the quietest titan in American finance. He sat on the boards of 2 major universities. He had been invited to dinner at the White House. He had shaken hands with governors, senators, and Fortune 500 CEOs who would return his phone call before they returned their own mothers. And the man in the cheap black uniform with the gold patch on his shoulder had spit next to his car and called him boy. Raymond Aldridge, who had listened to every word of the 34-minute encounter through that speakerphone, was already at his desk. He had the entire audio saved on 2 separate devices. He was drafting before Franklin even pulled into his own driveway. That evening, Franklin stood in the kitchen of 14 Crestwood Lane for the first time as its owner. The renovation was beautiful. Marble countertops, hardwood floors that caught the fading sunlight. The smell of fresh paint still lingered in the hallways. Denise sat at the kitchen island with a glass of water. Neither of them had spoken much since they walked through the front door. Franklin picked up his phone and called Sharon Whitfield. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was tight. She already knew something was wrong. Franklin spoke calmly, almost gently, like a surgeon explaining a procedure. "Mrs. Whitfield, this is Franklin Owens. I'm calling to inform you that I'll be filing a federal civil rights complaint against the Crestwood Hills Homeowners Association, Dale Hargrove, and Kyle Prescott, individually and institutionally." Sharon started to speak. Franklin continued. "I also want you to be aware that Pinnacle Equity Group holds a significant investment position in the real estate portfolio that includes the commercial properties your HOA currently leases, including the clubhouse and the maintenance facility on Ridgeline Road." The line went dead silent. Franklin could hear Sharon breathing, fast, shallow. "Mr. Owens, this was clearly a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can—" "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for accountability." He hung up. The kitchen was quiet. The last of the sunlight slipped behind the trees outside the window. Denise reached across the counter and put her hand over his. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The phone call had been made, and everything that came next, every consequence, every headline, every resignation, started right here, in this kitchen, in this house, the house they were told they didn't belong in. The next morning, an emergency HOA board meeting was called at 8 sharp. 5 board members sat around a long oak table in the Crestwood Hills clubhouse. The air conditioning hummed overhead. Coffee cups sat untouched. Nobody was in the mood. Sharon Whitfield sat at the head of the table. Her pearls were on, her blouse was pressed, but her face looked like she hadn't slept, because she hadn't. The HOA's attorney, a thin man in a gray suit named Gerald Cope, sat beside her with a laptop open. On the screen was Kyle Prescott's body camera footage, every second of it, every word. Dale Hargrove was brought in first. He walked into the room like he expected to be thanked. Chin up, shoulders square. He sat down across from the board and folded his arms. "I was following protocol," Dale said. "I did what I'm paid to do. I kept an unverified person from entering this community." Gerald Cope pressed play on the footage. The room watched in silence. They heard Dale say, "People like you don't live here." They heard him call Franklin a cockroach. They watched him wave white residents through without a glance, while Franklin sat on the shoulder for over 20 minutes. They saw him demand a trunk search. They saw him block the car with his body. They heard him dial 911 and describe Franklin as verbally confrontational, while Franklin hadn't raised his voice once. When the footage ended, nobody spoke for 10 seconds. Sharon Whitfield broke the silence. "Dale, the HOA was formally notified of Mr. Owens' purchase 3 weeks ago. You received that notification. You initialed it." Dale blinked. "I don't recall." Gerald Cope turned his laptop around. On the screen was a scanned copy of the notification form. Dale's initials, his handwriting, dated 3 weeks before the incident. He knew. He had always known. Dale's face went white. Not embarrassed white. Caught white. The kind of white that fills a man's face when every lie he's told collapses at the same time. I get dozens of forms every week. I can't be expected to remember every... You initialed it, Dale. The room was silent again. The board voted unanimously. Dale Hargrove, terminated, effective immediately. Kyle Prescott, terminated, effective immediately. Both were to be escorted off the property within the hour. Kyle was brought in next. He was shaking before he sat down. His face was pale and damp. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded and asked if he was going to be arrested. Nobody answered him. 2 Crestwood Hills maintenance staff walked Dale and Kyle to the front gate 30 minutes later. The same gate, the same booth, the same barrier that Dale had refused to lift. Dale's personal belongings were in a cardboard box. His flashlight, a coffee mug, a framed photo of himself in his old sheriff's deputy uniform, and a black 3-ring binder. That binder would become the most important piece of evidence in the entire case. Because when Kyle Prescott got home that afternoon, he didn't call a lawyer, he called Raymond Aldridge. Kyle was terrified. He was 28 years old and his career was already over. He wanted to cooperate. He wanted to tell someone what he had seen over the past 2 years working under Dale, and what he described was damning. The black binder Dale kept in the guardhouse was labeled Persons of Interest. Inside were 23 entries, photos, license plate numbers, physical descriptions, notes in Dale's handwriting, arrival times, vehicle types, how long they stayed. Every single entry was a person of color. Delivery drivers, housekeepers, landscapers, guests of residence. Every one. Not a single white person appeared in that binder. Not one. Kyle told Raymond that Dale had standing instructions for junior guards. If someone doesn't look like a resident, take extra time verifying them. Ask more questions. Make them wait. Make them uncomfortable. The goal wasn't security. The goal was deterrence. Raymond recorded every word. Back in Crestwood Hills, the community split. Some residents quietly supported Franklin. They had always found Dale aggressive and overbearing, but never said anything. Others were furious. Not at Dale, but at what they called the disruption. One resident told a neighbor that Franklin was making trouble for everyone. Sharon Whitfield released a statement that afternoon. Carefully worded, lawyer-approved. She called the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding and promised enhanced training protocols for all security personnel going forward. Raymond Aldridge read the statement out loud in his office. Then he picked up the phone and called a journalist he knew at WCNC Charlotte. "I have a story for you," he said, "and I have the footage to prove it." The footage hit WCNC Charlotte at 6 o'clock that evening. The anchor introduced the segment with 4 words that would trend nationally by midnight. CEO blocked from home. The clip was 90 seconds long, edited tight. It opened with Dale leaning into Franklin's window saying, "We don't let black people through this gate." It showed him waving Mrs. Patterson through with a smile. It showed him slapping the trunk and demanding a search. It ended with Hollins ordering him to open the gate while Dale stood frozen with his flashlight hanging at his side. 90 seconds. That's all it took. By morning, CNN had picked it up, then MSNBC, then every major digital outlet in the country. The full unedited footage, 11 minutes of Mrs. Bennett's phone recording, was uploaded to YouTube and hit 2 million views in 48 hours. The moment Dale said "people like you don't live here" became a meme, a symbol, a hashtag. It was printed on protest signs. It was quoted in opinion columns. It was played on loop in newsrooms across 3 time zones. Franklin declined every interview request, every single one. His silence made the story louder. And then, Dale Hargrove's past caught up with him. Journalists dug into his record. 3 excessive force complaints from his time as a county sheriff's deputy. One involving a 15-year-old black teenager pulled over on a bicycle. The teenager had been thrown to the ground and handcuffed for matching a suspect description. The suspect turned out to be a 40-year-old white male. Dale was never formally disciplined. He was allowed to resign quietly and collect his pension. That story ran alongside the Crestwood Hills footage, and the public response was volcanic. 2 weeks after the incident, Raymond Aldridge filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in the Western District of North Carolina. The defendants, Crestwood Hills Homeowners Association, Dale Hargrove individually, and Kyle Prescott individually. The complaint was 46 pages long. It cited 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, the Fair Housing Act, and North Carolina's state civil rights statutes. The allegations were precise and devastating. Racial profiling, unlawful detention, harassment, discriminatory enforcement of community access policies, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a pattern and practice of race-based gatekeeping stretching back at least 6 years. The centerpiece of the lawsuit was the black binder. Dale's Persons of Interest log was entered into evidence in its entirety. 23 entries. 23 people flagged, photographed, and tracked. Every single one a person of color. Not a single white individual appeared anywhere in those pages. Not a housekeeper, not a contractor, not a guest. Nobody. Kyle Prescott's sworn testimony filled in the rest. He described Dale's standing orders to junior guards, slow down verification for anyone who doesn't match the neighborhood, ask more questions, request more documents, make them wait longer, make them feel unwelcome. Kyle testified that in 2 years of working the gate, he had never once seen Dale ask a white resident for identification. Not once. The HOA's own internal records delivered the final blow. The notification of Franklin's property purchase had been sent to the security office 21 days before the incident. Dale had received it. He had opened the email. He had printed the form. He had initialed it and filed it. He knew Franklin Owens was the legal owner of 14 Crestwood Lane. He knew, and he blocked him anyway. While the civil case moved forward, the Mecklenburg County District Attorney opened a separate criminal investigation. The charges under consideration: false imprisonment and filing a false police report. Dale's 911 call had described Franklin as verbally confrontational and a potential trespasser. The body camera footage showed Franklin sitting calmly in his car with his hands on the steering wheel the entire time. He never raised his voice. He never stepped out of the vehicle. He never made a single threatening gesture. Dale had lied to the police. On a recorded 911 line, with a body camera running. The criminal case moved fast. Dale Hargrove was charged with filing a false police report, a Class 2 misdemeanor under North Carolina law. He pleaded no contest after his own attorney told him the body camera footage made a trial unwinnable. The judge sentenced him to 18 months of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, and, most critically, a permanent ban from holding any security, law enforcement, or public safety position in the state of North Carolina. Dale stood in the courtroom with his hands clasped in front of him. His attorney had told him to look remorseful. He mostly looked angry. When the judge read the permanent ban, Dale's left eye twitched. That was the moment it hit him. The uniform, the badge, the gate, the authority he had built his entire identity around. Gone. All of it. Permanently. Kyle Prescott, due to his cooperation with the investigation and his testimony against Dale, received no criminal charges. He was named in the civil lawsuit, but his portion of the settlement was symbolic. He would spend the next 2 years rebuilding a life defined by the worst decision he never pushed back against. The civil case settled 4 months later. The Crestwood Hills HOA agreed to pay $3.8 million. But the money wasn't the headline. The consent decree was. Under the terms of the agreement, the HOA was required to implement a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy for all security operations. Install a transparent, auditable access verification system with digital logs. Hire an independent civil rights monitor to oversee compliance for 3 years. And conduct mandatory bias training for every employee and board member, twice a year, with no exceptions. Sharon Whitfield resigned as HOA board president the day after the settlement was announced. Her resignation letter leaked to the press within hours. In it, she wrote one sentence that confirmed everything Franklin's legal team had alleged from the start. "I had concerns about the sale from the beginning, and I regret not acting on them sooner." She meant she regretted not stopping the sale. The public read it exactly that way. Franklin Owens gave one interview. Just one. A 12-minute sit-down with a national outlet. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He sat in a dark suit with his hands folded and spoke like a man who had spent a lifetime being underestimated and was no longer surprised by it. He talked about the gates, not just the ones at Crestwood Hills, the ones everywhere, the invisible ones, the ones that don't have barriers or guards but work exactly the same way, deciding who belongs and who doesn't based on nothing but the color of their skin. The interview was watched over 15 million times. 1 week later, Pinnacle Equity Group announced the creation of a $10 million initiative to fund fair housing legal clinics across the Southeast. The first clinic opened in East Baltimore, on the same block where Franklin grew up, 3 doors down from the crumbling apartment building in the photo on his desk. The Crestwood Hills incident became a case study. Law schools taught it in civil rights courses. Corporate DEI programs used the footage in training sessions. It was referenced in 2 congressional hearings on housing discrimination, all because a man tried to go home, and someone told him he couldn't. 3 months later, a Saturday morning in early autumn, the magnolia trees along Crestwood Lane had just started to turn. Golden leaves drifted across the stone driveway of number 14 like slow confetti. Franklin stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the hardwood floor, the same Howard University hoodie he'd worn the day he packed up the downtown condo. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room. Warm sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows and pooled across the marble countertop. He cracked 2 eggs into a skillet. The butter sizzled. Same routine, same man, just a different house. Denise came downstairs. Her hair was down. She wore an old college sweatshirt and carried a medical journal tucked under her arm. She kissed him on the cheek and sat at the island. "You ever think about selling?" she asked. Not seriously, more like she was testing the weight of the question. Franklin didn't look up from the skillet. He flipped an egg with a slow, easy wrist. "No." "Not even a little? I bought this house because I earned it, and I'm not going to let someone else's hatred tell me where I'm allowed to live." Denise smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't need teeth, just warmth, just knowing. He poured 2 cups of coffee. They walked out to the back porch together. The yard stretched wide and green, ending where the tree line began. A cardinal sat on the fence post, the same one Denise had watched through the car window that day at the gate. Or maybe a different one. It didn't matter. It was there, red and alive and unbothered. They sat side by side. The morning was quiet. The coffee was hot. The air smelled like cut grass and pine. At the front gate of Crestwood Hills, a new guard sat in the booth. Tamara Wells, 26 years old, black woman, crisp uniform, warm smile. She had been hired as part of the HOA's reformed security program, background checks, bias training, digital verification logs. Every morning, Franklin's Range Rover rolled up to the checkpoint, and every morning, Tamara waved him through with a nod and a smile. "Good morning, Mr. Owens." "Morning, Tamara." The gate lifted. No hesitation, no questions, no second look. Just a man going home. The way it always should have been. And that's the thing about this story. It's not really about Franklin Owens. It's not about Dale Hargrove. It's not about a gate or a binder or a body camera. It's about the moment someone looks at another human being and decides, based on nothing but skin color, that they don't belong, that they couldn't possibly own that house, drive that car, hold that title, live that life. Franklin had the resources to fight back. He had a $4 billion company behind him. He had a top civil rights attorney on speed dial. He had a name that carried weight in boardrooms and courtrooms across the country. He could absorb the legal fees. He could survive the emotional toll. He could wait it out and win. Most people can't. Most people don't have a Raymond Aldridge in their contacts. Most people don't have a body camera catching every word. Most people don't have a neighbor brave enough to hit record on her phone. Most people just get turned away at the gate, and nobody ever hears about it. That's why stories like this matter. Not because they're real, but because the pattern is.